Okay. Hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm here with Ashoka University. I have Vikram and Nani with me from Priya and Daksha University, respectively. So we have about 45 minutes to talk about these universities, give you whatever information you may need. So I'm going to jump right in and talk a little bit about Ashoka, and then hand it over to Vikram and Nani. So to start with, I think I'm just going to share my screen, see if you'll be able to see these slides. Um, yeah, so here are here are some slides that I'm going to be covering. To start with, I work with the Office of Outreach. I've also been a student at Ashoka and teaching assistant for some period. Ashoka University is located physically in Sonipat, Haryana. That's where the campus is. It's about 45 minutes away from Delhi. It is also one of the most prominent liberal education universities. And how we imagine liberal education is, and what helps me articulate it is through these four major points. One is with regards to the freedom. Okay, so actually, before this, I would want to probably give you a little bit of a context on how I understand liberal education. And how I understand it as a student of philosophy is through history. So if you look at ancient Greece, if you look at philosophers like Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, and if you come back to India and if you look at universities like Nalanda and Takshila historically, the form in which these universities, these academies or these places function is that students had the freedom to study what they wanted to study. So they would freely walk into an academy, they would pick the different kinds of disciplines they're drawn to, and then they would curate their experience at the universities as well as after those universities. So that's broadly where we see the origins of this format that we call education. So to start with, then uh, one of the most central aspects is the freedom of choice for students. So for a lot of students, especially in India, you're expected to specialize very early on. So at the age of 16, you're expected to know what is it that you're going to be and what disciplines are you going to study, and also not have access to other disciplines at the same time. So the idea, the primary idea that we work with is that students should have access to all sorts of disciplines that they may want to work with. And while they're doing that, another important aspect that has to be kept in mind is that liberal education is not merely disciplines that have to do with humanities or to do with arts. And that's a significant myth, especially in India, which is that liberal education is a humanities based discipline, which is not the case at all. So even if you look at all of these Greek academies or Nalanda, Takshila, a lot of students, a lot of scholars were working in natural philosophy. A lot of them were working in social sciences, were working in economics. So the idea is that we combine these disciplines and not just combine them, we have them speak to each other. One example of that is if we look at our current scenario, if we look at the pandemic, if we look at the environmental crisis that we're confronting, we realize that all of our decision makers right now will need to think about several aspects before making decisions. So if you think about a policy decision which has to do with the pandemic, we have to take into account the cultural history of a place before we implement a policy, or we also have to take into account the environmental science behind any scientific, any industrial decisions that we're making right now. So which is what brings me to the third point, which is the interdisciplinary approach, where all of these disciplines are expected to work in conversation with each other. And then what it does is, for students, there is a breadth of disciplines that are made available to them. They have an understanding of how these different disciplines work and interact with each other, and then as a student I can choose to build depth in my areas of interest. So moving to, so how Ashoka imagines that. So for Ashoka, that is the grounds of how we imagine liberal education. And then now coming to certain origins of where Ashoka started, these are some of the founders at Ashoka. They're pioneers in their own industries. They have had a significant exposure to liberal studies. And the idea behind Ashoka was to bring this education, especially back to India. So it was both, so liberal education is something that existed already in the past and has been lost over the years as we started specializing more and more. And for a lot of these founders, the idea was to bring that kind of access back to the country. So you can look up these people. You can see if you find the work of any of them interesting, and I would love to address any questions that you may have on them. This is the academic leadership at Ashoka. And then these are some of the faculty members at Ashoka. Now, how education is approached at Ashoka is that faculty members and students are at the center of the process, and they're also very, very significantly autonomous. So each faculty member comes with their own curriculum and pedagogical techniques. They're also very, very prominent and active scholars in their own fields. So, for example, Professor Gopal Krishna Gandhi is the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi. He was also the governor of West Bengal, amongst other positions that he's held. And what is interesting about his classroom is that for one of the courses that we took, we decided to pursue the independence struggle through music. So we picked up songs and poems in different kinds of languages and tried to make sense of the history of Indian independence. So for a lot of them, they're doing very, very interesting work in their own disciplines. I would invite you to look at their work, to look at the kind of scholarship they're producing, and see if you find resonance with your own interest areas. Now, coming to the undergraduate program, broadly, how the architecture for liberal education works at Ashoka is that it's 3+1 year program. For the first year, actually for the first 3 semesters, the students pursue what is called foundation courses. And as the phrase suggests, foundation courses are courses that give you a grounding of what liberal education is. Students come from all sorts of backgrounds. Let's say for someone like me, when I went to Ashoka, I came from a finance background. I had very little understanding of how other disciplines work. I had very little understanding of how natural sciences work. I didn't know how literature or philosophy is actually taught in a classroom. So the first 3 semesters, the idea is to bring all of the students on similar grounds and also to give them the space to experiment with what they want to study. So let's say if you're interested in psychology, you're also interested in visual studies and computer science at the same time, you take a bunch of courses and you work with the faculty members to make sense of what is it that you would want to take further into curating your career. It is it is in the 3rd semester when you're expected to pick a major and a minor, and also 2 co-curricular courses. So once you've picked your major, minor, and co-curriculars, you spend the next 2 years specializing in your respective disciplines, while also conversing with all the other disciplines around you. So that's broadly the first 3 years. At the end of these 3 years, you either choose to graduate or you choose to stay. Which is what leads you into a postgraduate diploma in advanced studies and research. This 4th year is broadly put in place for 2 reasons, which is going to significantly change now with the new education policy, which is that these 4 years of education is a requirement for a lot of master's and PhD programs abroad, especially for a lot of universities in the US. So the 4th year allows you to qualify for those programs. Another reason why the 4th year is instituted is for students who've taken a particular interest in a particular discipline and might want to do advanced work in that discipline. These are some of the foundation courses. Again, I would highly recommend you looking at the website, going through the course plan, going through the reading recommendations for them, and the faculty members taking these courses. These broadly are put together to sort of build a holistic understanding of how liberal education is pursued, and also a kind of training in critical thinking. These are the major, minors, and co-curriculars at Ashoka. You can pick either pure majors or interdisciplinary majors. You can also pick a minor from one of the pure majors. If you have any questions about any specific majors or minors or co-curriculars, please ask me. I would love to try addressing that question for you. And then this is the 4th year at Ashoka. Just a little something that came to me about this is that at Ashoka, students combine these majors and minors in the most interesting ways. I know students who are studying psychology and working with movement because they've been pursuing performing arts for a while. I also know students who are studying computer science and are artists. So they're training to be coders. And they're training to be coders to be artists. So there are these very, very creative ways in which we can curate our careers. And I would love to see if you have any such interests that can be put together in correspondence with each other. This is the 4th year at Ashoka. You can do 3 kinds of things. One, you can choose to do an advanced major in the discipline that you've been studying. You can also choose to convert a minor into a major, so you'll be graduating with a double major, or you can choose to pursue a whole new minor. When you're doing that, two specific aspects that are very important at Ashoka are research and thesis writing, because academic writing is something that's not focused on during undergraduate studies, especially in India. So these 2 components are really important to your 4th year, and also you work as a teaching assistant for one of your faculty members. These are the sciences at Ashoka. Sciences at Ashoka is a very, very significant part of the program. And the distinction between typical sciences that are pursued as opposed to sciences at Ashoka is that there's a whole lot more focus on academic and research work. So Ashoka houses some of the most sophisticated labs in the country. Scientists across the country, students, researchers work in a collaborative architecture to produce research. Again, I think looking at the website to find details about these majors and minors would be very, very valuable. These are some of the international partners. These partnership works in 3 ways. One, there is an exchange of students between these universities through summer, semester programs, and master's programs. There is also an exchange of faculty members between them. And then lastly, there is an exchange of knowledge between these universities. Coming to the resident life, our campus is shut as of now because of the pandemic. But usually, Ashoka is a self-sufficient campus because it's a residential campus. Everything that a student may possibly need is made available on campus. And in terms of the student life, because students come from all sorts of varied backgrounds, it is also a very, very vibrant campus in terms of student interests and also student interests outside of their academic work. There are several ways in which students choose to transition out of Ashoka. One is through their work in the industry. So these are some of the placement statistics and some of the places where students go to. Because the student body at Ashoka is very diverse, both in terms of their interests and in terms of their own backgrounds. They usually tend to go to different kinds of universities. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is the kind of industries that students usually go to. These are some of the places where students go to after they graduate from Ashoka. And this is for students who choose to study after graduating. This is the fee structure. The fee is 9.4 lakhs per annum, and then it is supplemented by need-based financial aid. What that means is that it is not a merit-based scholarship. It is going to be based on the income of your family, and you're given a certain percentage of funding at the time of your admission. On the right, you'll see broad statistics on financial aid. Over 50% students are on some percentage of financial aid, and 120 students of the 600 are on full funding. So I think what is important to note here about this is that the financial aid program at Ashoka is an extremely sturdy program, and it commits to not having any student not be able to come to Ashoka because they couldn't afford it. These are some diversity statistics at Ashoka. Diversity, as I said earlier, is extremely important, and it's not just important for ethical concerns, but for academic concerns. So for me at Ashoka, it was extremely valuable to be working with different cultural settings, to be working with different linguistic backgrounds. I learned so much. I discovered literature, I discovered forms of art that I wouldn't have otherwise. And that has informed my academic work also over these years. So these are some of the diversity statistics. And then coming to the admissions process again does not follow a typical cutoff based methodology. There is the stage one where you work on a profile. So you build an application where you'll be submitting your academic scores, your personal essays, your letter of recommendation, your extracurricular activities. This is broadly for the admissions team to get to know you as a person, not just in the classroom, but also outside the classroom. After going through your profile, you're invited for an interview. If you're invited for an interview, you'll be having a conversation with the admissions team at the stage two. You will also be taking an on-the-spot essay. Once all of that is done, another important thing to note is that you can take the Ashoka aptitude test if you would like to, if you have opted for it. You can also submit your SAT or ACT scores if required. And then, so once your stage two is complete, you then move on to the admissions decision. Once you receive the admissions decision is when you kick off the financial aid application process. This is broadly the admissions timeline. Admissions at Ashoka open in October, sometime early October, and go on for 4 rounds. You can apply in any of the 4 rounds, depending on when you feel ready to apply. It is recommended to apply early because it gives both the university and you a lot more time and information. But it's always important to apply when you feel prepared with your application. This is a little bit about. So this is a little information which I can, where you can reach me at. And then to conclude, these are the basic aspects that Ashoka pays attention to quite significantly. And then just one last bit of information, if you find it valuable, there are a bunch of workshops that Ashoka is doing right now, especially because of the pandemic. It has curtailed a lot of our lives, but it has also opened up opportunities for us to reach a much larger set of students. So there are scientifically speaking workshops and beyond the classroom workshops, which are also happening in different vernacular languages. And I would invite you to take a look at the website and see if you find any of these subjects or workshops valuable. With this, I'm going to finish and hand it over to Vikram and Neni. If you have any questions, please place them in the questions box, and I would love to address them at the end of this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manu. I hope everyone can hear me. Hello, I'm Vikram. I'm part of the Office of Outreach at Kriya University. And I'm going to, so I'll try to keep my presentation very, very short because we have 45 minutes and I really want to keep some time for questions. So pardon me if I skip some slides, but I'll try to cover as much as I can. So I think Manu's really done the groundwork of explaining to all of you what is liberal education and what happens in a liberal arts and sciences university. So I'm sure many of you have heard about Kriya. We're sort of new, but not really new. We've completed 2 cycles of recruitment. We started in 2018, but for all of you, Kriya is new, but it's not, because there's something called IFMR, which is Institute for Financial Management and Research, which is an organization that was started by Mr. N. Vagul, who is one of the founding chairmen of ICICI Bank about 50 years ago. And IFMR is really into very high quality research in financial inclusion, literacy, poverty, access, women empowerment. And they have centers across the country and around the world. Those of you who have heard of Professor Abhijit Banerjee, who's recently won a Nobel Prize, most of his work was under something called JPAL, which is the Poverty Action Lab, and the Asia Center of JPAL is housed under IFMR. They have iWage that works with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They had, so there's LEAD that works with MIT. So they work with, as I said, they work with governments and universities around the world. So IFMR also offers a business school for the last 20 years under the name of IFMR Graduate School of Business. But really in 2018, when IFMR got an opportunity to become a university, more people joined in, and that's when Kriya was really born. Yeah, so sort of, I think, the aim of really Kriya's vision is to create students that are or graduates that are going to be ready to work in an unpredictable world, right? And sort of to create students with an ability to learn, to adapt, to be agile, to be ethical decision makers, and really the change makers of the 21st century. So Kriya is also Kriya is a fully philanthropic university. We work on the model of collective philanthropy. So really, I mean, it's just one-way money that's coming in as donations, and nobody's really earning out of the university. So Kriya again is a very how do I say, a very flat structure of organization. So we have a governing council that really comprises of scientists, researchers, intellectuals, industry leaders from around the world who've sort of come together to build the university. Some of them are, people like Dr. Raghuram Rajan, who's a former governor of RBI, Anand Mahindra, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, who's really a pioneer in life sciences research in India, the head of Biocon, and people like that. We recently had, Rajiv Memani, who's the chairman of the Ernst & Young India, who's joined this. Then we have an equally strong academic council, people who decide on what is to be taught at the university. And that includes people like Professor John H. Mendy, who's the longest serving provost of Stanford University, Manjul Bhargava, who's a Fields Medal winner in math from Princeton. We have Vishaka Desai from Columbia. We've had Raghu Sundaram, who's the Dean of NYU Stern. So people like that, T.M. Krishna, who's a musician. So people from all walks of life have come together to set up a university in India that probably will give you the same kind of intellectual environment, the same freedom to choose courses between sciences, humanities, social sciences, and arts, and the same quality of faculty that you would get at any good global university. So that's how Kriya's really come up. And we continue to add. So as I said, so Kriya has, there are 2 schools under Kriya, and there are a lot of research centers under Kriya. So the IFMR Graduate School of Business offers MBA programs. The School of Interwoven Arts and Sciences offers the undergraduate programs. Currently, there are 3+1 year programs, and we offer a BA and BSc honors degrees under the School of Interwoven Arts and Sciences. And I think this question might really cross everybody's mind here, and we get this asked often, right? Of how Kriya is different. I think there are a lot of multidisciplinary universities in the world. I think when you say multidisciplinary, you really are combining disciplines, or interdisciplinary. When you are, for example, studying economics and doing a major in economics, but study a couple of subjects in politics. But we've really gone a step ahead to build a layer which is called interwoven learning, which is what Kriya is pioneering. And we've sort of, really in a lot of ways, weave the arts and the sciences, the Eastern and Western perspectives, theory and practice into these 8 guiding principles that define everything that we do at Kriya. So whether, it being writing intensive, so it doesn't matter whether you're doing literature or history, or whether you're doing biology or physics, you will have a strong component of writing, academic writing, research writing. How do you communicate? And a lot of these really are dependent on the skills that are going to be required in the future. The World Economic Forum says that jobs of the 2030, almost 85% of them doesn't even exist as yet. So how do I see students and parents watching this webinar. How do you decide on what degree to choose or what career to go to, especially when you're going to change so many careers and so many jobs, right? So we've identified these skills and put them as guiding principles for our programs that we do at Kriya. So research obviously is Kriya's pedigree is into research. And all our programs are research based. Historicity, for example, right? So even if you do chemistry, you will have a history of science program. How did change happen, right? Or for example, data analytics. Really, even if you're a history major or a literature major, all our conversations today revolve around data. So how do you become comfortable with working with data, with numbers, or even just working with unanswered questions or working with uncertainty? Look at what the last 4 months have given us, right? It's all uncertainty. And how do you work in an environment like this? So this really, to me, clearly is the biggest USP of studying at Kriya. I think we are probably the only university that's starting out with the entire gamut of pure sciences, applied sciences, social sciences, humanities, and arts, and we really understand how all of them work together to bring a graduate that understand today's problems. So like other liberal universities in India, we also have a 3+1 year structure. In the 3 years, the first year is the foundation year, wherein, even though you've decided that you want to do economics, we really give you another year to sort of navigate between subjects and understand what you really like. So even here, you have everything from mathematical and scientific reasoning to one end, to literature and creative arts and creative expression and communication on the other, right? So I'm sure many of you who are humanities students might be wondering, I'm not so comfortable with math. But really, how do like math that we have is really mathematical reasoning, right? So you have concepts of game theory, probability. How do you think like a mathematician and make sense of things? And then you also have data analytics, design thinking, ethics. And we really believe that after somebody's gone through this foundation year, you're more sort of equipped to take a better decision on what major or minor you'd want to study at CREA. So currently, CREA offers like about 13 majors and 15 minors, and all the majors can also be taken as minors. So in this slide you see majors listed on under the degrees, but that's not how it is in CREA. We don't have we don't have departments but divisions. So you have a division of sciences, then you have social sciences and arts and humanities. So it really is that you can suppose take a major in economics and a minor in computer science, or politics and policy, or biology and psychology. So all of those are possibilities for you to study at CREA. So apart from pure majors that we offer, we also offer, as I said, minors. But other than minors, there's also something called concentration, which is so a major is when you do between 12 to 14 courses. Minor is when you do between 6 to 8, and a concentration is when you do just 3 or 4. And then we've also started offering a lot of joint majors. So for example, those of you interested in international policy or trade, we have a joint major in politics and history. We have a course that we're offering, which is a joint major in economics and environment studies, computer science and mathematics. So some of those are already being offered at CREA. And the 4th year is really for advanced studies. So it's a postgraduate diploma that you get. And really, when you want to deep dive into the major that you've done, you have an option of studying the 4th year. I would really invite all of you to actually go on the website and have a look at the faculty members that we have at CREA. I think we've been very, very fortunate to get 35 of them on board. And these really are people, who align with the interwoven learning model that CREA is trying to establish. I mean, the dean of the school is Professor Bishnu Mahapatra. He's a political scientist from Oxford, but he's also a wonderful poet. We have Rishi, who's a math PhD from Cambridge, but interested in how ethical decision-making can impact mathematical modeling. We have Akhila, who's a computer scientist, who's also a theater artist, who's also a writer. Recently, we've had Professor Ramchandra Guha, who's a historian, who's also an economist. Like people who really set things in their discipline, right? Anil Srinivasan, who's a pianist, but who can also teach you behavioral economics and psychology. So people from all around the world who've probably studied from some of the best universities in the world, have taught there, and have high quality research, are going to be teaching you. And this list just keeps increasing. So I request you to go on the website and read about some of them. In terms of partnerships, we've just started and we've sort of looked at partnerships with a very, very purposeful manner. We're looking at obviously not just university partnerships. We're also looking at institutional and government partnerships. So for example, one of our institutional partnership is with the Academic Internship Council, AIC, which is in the US. So this is a body that really gives internships to even some of the Ivy League universities, for example, Yale. And in India, CREA is the only university to have partnered with them. So, CREA students can not only do internships in India, but in about 20 global cities around the world. Obviously, there's a partnership with the Mohammed Yunus Center for Social Business, the Dalai Lama Center for Ethics. And with university partnerships, we've looked at courses that students might benefit. So, for example, if you are interested in data and policy, we have a partnership with the University of Chicago, Harris Public Policy School. If you're looking at environment studies, we have James Cook University that probably offers the best marine biology program in the world and things like that. I'm running out of time and I'm going to skip very fast. So what can you do after studying at Kriya? Well, literally anything. This is a very small list. We're located about 60 kilometers north of Chennai, in a place called Sri City. It's a special economic zone. So and there are about 200 companies located there. It's not really in the middle of nowhere. Kriya has a 40-acre campus. It's beautiful, green, clean air to breathe. And it's a fully residential program campus. You can go on YouTube and find videos about the campus. You have beautiful dormitories, student lounges, cafeterias, sports facilities. It's really state of the art. And to spend the last 2 minutes about the admission process and what we really are looking for. So Kriya, I think we've looked at, for the first 2 batches, I've looked at a very small number, simply because we didn't have the capacity on campus between the undergrad and postgraduate program, but now we're coming up with 2 new residence halls. So we've increased the capacity to take about 250 to 300 students next year. But really, I think it's a merit-based process that we really follow, and we have a selection mindset. So we really want to select students, but obviously because of the overwhelming number of applications we always receive, it is rigorous. And the second thing is that we are need aware, which means that when you apply to Kriya, you don't really have to worry about whether you can afford to study or not. We have 100% plus aid that's available. We only provide need-based aid and not merit-based. So, for example, out of the 113 students that enrolled in Kriya in the first year, almost 25 of them study at no cost. They don't pay anything. They're on full aid. Almost 50% of the class studies at some form of financial aid. So money shouldn't be a problem for you to study. There are 2 stages of selection. The first stage is really an application form that is very similar to when you apply to universities abroad, wherein we look at everything from academics, extracurriculars, co-curriculars, your SAT, ACT scores, which are optional, obviously, and the person's story. And in your personal story, we are really looking at who you are as a person, what's your story, and sort of your levels of awareness of what you're looking for, awareness of self, awareness of society, awareness of what you are looking in terms of acquiring from Kriya. And here also we allow creative expression, so you don't have to write. You can make a video or put up larger pictures. So that's really the application. If you clear the first stage, we bring you into something called an immersion day. So immersion day is really a long process that we do. It's a case study that it starts with. And the case study is very, very open-ended. It is about a current problem, world problem that we want to solve. And so, by the way, Immersion Day used to happen in about 10 cities across the country, and it was an on-ground activity. But because of the pandemic, we've shifted it to online. But if things get better, next year we might again be on ground. So from the case, you come back, you write a reflective essay, which is on the spot. Then we put you into teams to understand how you work in groups. You have to do presentations, you have a one-on-one conversation, and you also have a test on content logical reasoning. So more about this, I'm happy to answer in the Q&A, and thank you so much. And off to Neni.
Thank you so much, Vikram. Hi everyone, I hope you can see my screen. I am Neni Katyal. I'm representing Plaksha University today. I've been leading outreach and also handling a summer school program here at Plaksha from past 2 years now. And I'll just quickly take you through the presentation to tell you more about Plaksha. It's very interesting to see that Plaksha is coming at a very, very interesting times of COVID. And we are living in a technology-enabled world, and technology has become the core of our world, and we need to build skills and competencies in various fields, and that is what we are building at Plaksha. So as I mentioned, Plaksha is a new age tech university which focuses on interdisciplinary engineering education. So we are completely breaking away from the silos that you see in the engineering education space, which is mechanical, electrical. Am I audible? Just wanted to check once again. Vikram, if you can help me.
Yes, we can hear you, Nani. Yes.
So just, we are breaking away from the silos of what engineering education space provides, which is electrical, mechanical, CS, and we are getting into a more interdisciplinary approach that involves AI, robotics, machine learning, data sciences, and I will talk more about our courses moving forward, and integrated with liberal arts, design, and entrepreneurship, which is contrary to what we see in the engineering education space right now. Also, our engineering education curriculum will be intertwined with hands-on and experiential learning. So whatever that you're learning, you will be applying in your 4 years at Plaksha. And of course, a lot of focus on self and leadership. So these are the key points and our vision at Plaksha. So this whole idea was started by collective philanthropists, a very similar idea and a vision like Ashoka and Kriya. And the base has been really set right by my friends here. But Plaksha, of course, will have the core as technology, while it will have elements of liberal arts and entrepreneurship intertwined in the curriculum. So this idea started when 80 plus founders at Plaksha came together and said, that there is a huge gap we see right now, which is that when engineering students come out of college, they're not able to apply the right skill set that we need in the industry right now. And we have a huge community of these founders. Some of them were also involved in building up Ashoka University and are currently working on building Plaksha. This is just a quick background on our founder community, which is we have CXO, MD level people from global organizations, including Boston Consulting Group, Netflix, Schlumberger, Tech Mahindra. And we also have some founders who have founded companies like Zomato, Innovate, Clicks Capital, Genpact. These are very, very new age companies that have come out. In fact, the founder of Akash Institute is also on our board. Now, further, before I even jump further into what Plaksha offers, the whole point is to understand why do we need another tech education, a new age tech university when there are so many existing. There are three very, very important statistics to look at, which is one, that while there are so many engineering colleges in India, only 3 make it to the QS World Ranking, including the IITs. The second one is that by 2030, India envisions to have 1,200 more colleges to accommodate students like you who are coming out of 12th grade, which is a huge number in itself. And the third statistic is around National Employability Report, which says that 80% of the engineering students who come out of college are unemployable, which is a very, very shocking statistic. And that is exactly with the vision, with the kind of gap we want to fill at Plaksha, that this whole idea took birth few years back, and now it's finally in its launch phase. So many a times we've seen that, a lot of you right now, before choosing your careers, must be thinking about, the kind of university you want to go into, the kind of courses you want to choose. But the right question to ask yourself is, what kind of careers do you want to build further? So when we actually went back to all these academicians few years back across the globe, that we have this idea, we have this vision with the founders, all these academicians that you can see on the slide right now got very, very excited. We have people like Dr. Abhijit Banerjee, who's of course a Nobel laureate. We have Mr. James Holloway from University of New Mexico. We have Ashish Nanda from Harvard Business School. All these people who came together to build the curriculum at Plaksha from scratch, make it interdisciplinary, and make it as experiential as possible, which is the need of the hour right now. We also were able to ink our partnership so far with University of California, Berkeley, Purdue University, and Stanford Research Institute. And while a lot of other partnerships are on its way, but these are all not on just papers, but these are university-wide partnerships. While with Stanford Research Institute, we have a partnership on the research front. So they are helping us build the curriculum from scratch, get the best of the best faculty in place, and also help us build our exchange programs. So just to mention about Plaksha's offerings, so far from 2018, we started with our summer school program, which is a 2-week summer school program that is offered to students like you from grade 9 to 11. To give a glimpse of what technology education should be in real, and completely throw away the kind of mindsets that we already have for the engineering education. So we get top-notch faculty to teach students in these 2 weeks. Dr. Hanuman Singh has been one of the academicians that has been with us since a very long time. He's a director level person from Northeastern University and also has been a scientist at MIT. Dr. Ravi Chisuja comes from Harvard Medical School, which is, again, he's a director level person. So students come to dive deeper into technology education and also build projects that are not just, a Lego kit that is given to you. Rather, these are master's and PhD level projects that you work on. So as you can, I'll just quickly give you a small glimpse of what Plaksha does here, is that this boy that you can see in the yellow t-shirt, he's working on building a brain-computer interface. So someone who has paralysis and cannot move their hand, how can they use their brain signals by the blink of the eye to control their prosthetic hand? So yes, the whole vision is to solve real world problems using technology. We have another program that we launched last year, which is called the Tech Leaders Fellowship Program. It's a 1-year master's level program wherein students dive deep into AI and machine learning curriculum. This is the first year that the students graduated this year. It was co-designed and co-delivered by UC Berkeley. Now, just jumping right straight to the kind of questions I was seeing on the chat box as well. These are our very exciting majors that we're launching next year in the fall of 2021. The first course is on computer science and artificial intelligence. So this is not a conventional computer science degree. The core while will be on computer science, but it will involve an understanding of AI and machine learning, because just pure coding in computer science is not enough. Of course, with the strong focus of liberal arts and entrepreneurship. The next course that you can see is robotics and cyber physical systems. So robot can be as simple as a chat box you see on your platforms right now while using different platforms, including Zoom or Google Meet, to something like a very complicated humanoid, which can debate in a world champion debater competition, right? So how a robot interacts not just in the cyber world, but also in the physical world is the essence of the course that we are offering here. It of course have elements of electrical, mechanical, electronics, and computer science in it, and of course IoT as well. The next course, which is very close to my heart, is the biological systems engineering. This is again not a very conventional biotech or biomedical kind of degree, and we're sitting right in middle of a pandemic, right? Just you require an engineer who's working on the problem right now would require not just an understanding of genetic engineering, but also an understanding of quantum, of research behind it, of the number of people who are affected by the COVID, etc., etc. I won't dive deep into it. All these courses are very much mentioned on our website as well. So definitely go and discover them further. The fourth course that we have is data science, business, and economics. The most interesting part of this course is that it is open also for commerce and humanities students, because I saw a student from Shriram asking that question in the chat box. So it is extremely interdisciplinary in nature. How does, while of course there will be a lot of focus on data here, but it also borrows principles from business and economics. Now, moving further, we start our admission process in 2020 October. Our campus, I forgot to mention, is coming up in Chandigarh, Mohali, and is very close to the ISB campus, to the Peck University, ISA, and it's in middle of the place, which has like an entire myriad of universities around the whole zone. I have showed you a very brief glimpse of what Plaksha offers. Just to quickly give a background, our application process will involve one of your tests, standardized test scores that we will need, either SAT, ACT, JEE Mains, or KVPY. We will also require transcripts from of your grades from 9 to 12. While, of course, as I mentioned, mathematics will be needed for all the 4 courses, while we need physics for the first 3 courses, except data science course. We will also have our own application form that is to get to know you better. So this will involve a video and written essays, and also an artifact of what you've done beyond your classroom. And finally, followed by a virtual interaction and this will be also an opportunity for you to ask questions about Plaksha, while also we will get to know you better, and again taken up by our founders and faculty who are coming up on board. So that is it from my side. To reach out to us, this is our website. You can write to us at apply@plaksha.org or visit our website at www.plaksha.org. And now we can quickly jump into questions. Manu Vikram, are you here?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Great. So I could see a lot of questions for us. Do you want to start?
We can probably start from the top and try to address the questions in that order. I'm trying to get to the top of it.
Sure. I can see one question on Plaksha, which I answer. Your site refers to data science, economics, and business course. Will this be open for those with no science in grade 12? Yes, it will be open. You just have to have mathematics in your 12th grade.
The next question that I see is career prospects for computer science and entrepreneur leadership. So I think that's an interdisciplinary major that's available with Ashoka. Now, when we look at career prospects, how the placements process works at Ashoka is that it's not limited to the major and minor that you take. So the idea is that almost absolutely every student who's studying at Ashoka can sit through the placements process. And hence, it's a bit complicated in the sense that I know political studies students who've gone to management consulting, computer science students also doing management consulting. Then there are students who are doing computer science and entrepreneurship and have started something of their own, while also computer science students who've gone to traditional kinds of profiles also. So when we think about career prospects at Ashoka, that applies in general to all students and not just having a particular major or minor, which is that you sit through the placements process that anybody that comes to campus to recruit speaks to all sorts of majors and minors. And if you think about it from the point of view of the recruiters also, the recruiters are also very interested in hiring students who have an interdisciplinary background and are recruiting students from these different disciplines. I know English studies students who've gone to pharmaceutical profiles. I know computer science students who were working as artists. Computer science and entrepreneur together are also doing a lot of work in development consulting, which is again a very, very interesting area that students go to. So I hope that answers your questions. The next question I see is for Kriya.
Yeah. So there's Riddhi Lohani. She's a student of DPS Arkepuram. Hi, Riddhi. So I think the question is, Kriya, do you offer a joint major in psychology and pol science? Well, not really this year. But what happens, Riddhi, is that because of the program that we offer, which is liberal in nature, I think each year we'll be able to offer different kind of joint majors, depending on what students want to study. Obviously, you have an option of doing a major and a minor. So if psychology is something that excites you more, you can always take that up as a major, and you can study politics as a minor. But right now we don't offer a joint major between psychology and political science. But you're open to take open electives, do concentrations. So you have academic mentors at Kriya who are probably assigned you from day one. So they're going to take you through the entire thing, and you can have conversations with them and sort of try to understand what would work better, and then take your decision. Yeah, I hope you have answered your question.
I'm going to jump right into the next question, which says, what are the benefits for IB students at Ashoka? Also, what is the criteria for scholarships? Now, with regards to, so in terms of the admissions process, there is no distinction between IB students and CBSE students or students from other different kinds of boards. The benefit that I have personally noticed IB students have is that they already have a significant background in academic writing. I have noticed that IB students tend to be much better trained in it because of the way their curriculum and pedagogy is organized, which does help because a lot of the application involves writing work, and a lot of work on campus also involves writing work. But there is no distinction in the admissions process. All students are approached with the same kind of criteria. Now, with regards to scholarships, it is a need-based scholarship that is made available in Ashoka. So you can qualify for a scholarship if your family income allows you to qualify for it. So you have to submit financial documents after your admissions process, and you get a funding on the basis of that. There is no merit-based scholarship that is available. There's also a quick question, which is how to choose the right stream, which I think all of us will agree is a very, very good question. But it's also a question that needs a broader answer. I'm going to try to answer it in the session that follows this one, where we have individual rooms, and I will try to address this. But this is a really good question, and I think we should hold on to it to try addressing it. Then, Vikram, if you have something to say on the question,
a very interesting perspective actually is that, see, I've studied computer science in my undergrad. I don't know whether any of you have studied to become a career counselor, but really, I think think of your undergraduate degrees as just a foundation year, a foundation degree, because 80% of the times you don't really end up into what you study. And when you're 17, 18, thinking of a career for yourself, for which you want to follow through your life is difficult, right? I mean, you have multiple interests. You like psychology, but you also like music, but you also like economics. Why choose, right? The beauty of liberal education is it allows you to customize your degree and really do that. So I think you should be open to studying all of this.
Also, for me, I mean, I started with commerce and then I moved into finance, and then now I'm studying philosophy. So for me, the choosing of the right stream also had to do with experiencing different disciplines. And I think the choice for me initially was limited because I was too scared of how do I find a career in a discipline such as philosophy. But as I came in contact with liberal education, with Ashoka, I realized that I can actually build very, very rewarding careers in the discipline that I. So for me, choosing the right stream at this point has to do with what I love doing through the day. And if I enjoy studying philosophy through the day, that's the stream I would pick. And then I would try to find opportunities around it. Just another with regards to the admissions timelines at Ashoka, we've completed our admissions process for this year, and we're going to be starting our admissions for the next year in this year. So yeah, we completed our admission rounds for the last year.
I think there's one last question that we can take, seeing that we have 2 minutes. And I think this question is for all three of us, from Anupama Bakaya. She says, for admissions to all three universities, are you going to be test optional for students applying for 2021, considering that even the August SAT has been cancelled? So I can talk for CREA, and maybe Manu and Neni can talk about their universities. So at CREA, SAT really doesn't replace anything. I mean, giving SAT doesn't exempt you from anything that we do at CREA, right? There isn't a test that you can give if you don't give SAT. So SAT, there are only two advantages of giving SAT. One is that if you don't have a good predicted score in your grade 12th, then SAT sort of overrides that if you have a good SAT score. And the second thing really, which is important, is SAT allows you to get a firm offer versus a conditional offer. I think that's also a big advantage, because otherwise you always have a sword hanging, right? You have to get, if you've predicted a 42 in DP, you have to get it. But if you've given a good SAT score, then that exempts you from that. But otherwise, there is no difference at all in the selection itself. So don't worry, only 1 out of 4 students that apply to CREA give SAT. So it's not really mandatory.
Yeah, for Plaksha, we we are taking one of the standardized test code just to increase as much as inclusion as much as possible. We will be looking at a very flexible approach given how the situation has been. Our admission only starts in October, so we will be taking that call by end of September. If SATs do not happen, then Plaksha is also looking at building our own application form. While we were absolutely against it, thinking that there is already so much of pressure with students giving so many exams, so we didn't want to do that. But given the situation, then we will be looking at that way. So we are looking at that approach. Just one last question. I saw one question on our university building up and following the timeline. Yes, the timeline is very much on track. We launch next year for sure. The construction has been happening since last few years, and even during the COVID situation, nothing has stopped really. Manu, over to you.
Yeah, no, I think there are still a lot of questions, but because I think we might be running out of time, I'm not too sure. But to my understanding, all of us are also going to be at our own respective booths. If we have unfortunately not been able to address your question, please do visit us, and we would love to address your questions. And yeah, with regards to the last two questions, I think SATs, you can submit your SATs at Ashoka, but it's not mandatory. You can also take the Ashoka aptitude test if you might want to do so, but that's also not mandatory. It's mostly to do with your overall profile. And in terms of what is happening with regards to COVID, I think for all of us, we're trying to make decisions. We're trying to sort of take in information and then react to that information, keeping in mind the student at the center of all of this, right? So for Ashoka, the campus has been closed, but classes are happening online. We've sort of innovated a lot of different ways we can make that effective. And hopefully next year it's going to be better and we're going to be back on our campuses. You can, in terms of I think one last question is, how do we address you? I'm taking it to be, how do we reach out to you? So what we can do is, if we are at the close of the session, I'm a little uncertain, but if we are at the close of the session, we can put in our email IDs and we'll meet you at the booths. We're just going to hop on over to those two booths and talk to you all.
I think we can put it in the chat so that it's visible to everyone. But thank you so much, guys, and all the very best, and take care, and don't worry. We are all with you, and we are thinking of students all the time. So don't worry. We are not going to make it tough for you. We understand what you're going through. So thank you.
And thank you for organizing this college fair. This is a wonderful place to meet all of you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for everybody being present here. I can see a lot of ITS students also. So hello. We will be there, as Manu mentioned, at the booth. Feel free to come and say hello. Bye.